So we start now. So I'm going to just introduce the next moderator, whom I know for I don't know how many years already, who presented himself yesterday evening by saying he's a chief fusionist from a business perspective, from a cooking perspective, and from a music perspective. And with that, I'm going to move it over to Upen, please.
Thank you. Good evening. Good evening, everybody. Intensive discussions, amazing discussions this morning. Thanks again, Michelle, Emma, Andrea, for putting together such a great, high-quality group. Really enjoyed the chat. So, just checking in. Michelle, how about Eric? He's in. Eric, yep. Eric, can you hear me?
Very well.
Excellent. All right, so welcome everybody to the Fireside Chat. There's a lot of fire in everybody's belly, and everybody you will hear on the panel today. So what are we talking about? It's ecosystems of innovation. It's about how to moonshot innovation in Europe. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the visionaries, the trailblazers, architects of the future, as I want to call you, very welcome. Today we are at a very interesting crossroad in Europe, a continent that actually gave everybody the Industrial Revolution, a lot of foundations, as I call, for the modern science, but now we are faced with a challenge of a little bit of a different kind, right? So how do we reclaim that rightful place in innovation, if at all we're going to have one? We have the talent, we have the intellect, the history, but you know, as we saw this morning, let's be brutally honest, there's something wrong. When it comes to moonshots, when it comes to innovation, we're probably not the fastest moving on this planet at the moment, collectively put together as Europe. While Silicon Valley will, you know, launch various bold, high-risk ventures, Asia is moving very, very fast in terms of scaling at a dizzying speed. Europe, we are caught in the gears of bureaucracy, fragmented investment landscape, and I don't know if there's a certain reluctance to take that leap as well. But this must change. Europe needs that audacity, more moonshot thinking, even though we might not be working on real moonshots. We must not simply build the startups. We should build or focus on building global titans who are the companies not only participating in markets, but really be able to create those markets. And in order to discuss this, how do we empower the European startups and compete globally, how to navigate the corporate partnerships, how do we collaborate, how do we expand, how do we scale? I've got a phenomenal panel here, and let's start welcoming the first one, Maiara from Conceptboard, please. Join us. Welcome, thanks. You take the seat in the middle, I guess that's... Yeah. And my pleasure, we have Eric Saracchi, who's joining us online. He's the CDO and CIO of Audemars Piguet. He's also a member of the executive team. Warm welcome to Eric. And I'd like to welcome Rolf Schumann, CEO of Schwarz Digits and CDO of Schwarz Gruppe. Thanks a lot, welcome. I would like to welcome Andreas, co-founder of Enclaive. Welcome, Andreas. I'd like to also welcome Johann Dornbach, Vice President, AI Frontier at Aleph Alpha. Thanks for joining. Please take a seat. And last but not least, Pascal Simmons, Global ECM Transformation Director, AXA. So while this may sound like a Q&A and me putting you on the spot, you are actually putting me on the spot. It's really a discussion, everybody. Eric, I can see you very well here on the screen directly. So yeah, let's get you guys are ready? Yeah, all right. Let's get started. Understanding the innovation landscape and desire. Europe, I guess we all agree, we have a lot of deep tech expertise. We have very strong regulations that we love. We have amazing skilled workforce. But the question really is, to begin with, do we have that character? Do we have that desire? Do we have that speed anymore? I don't know. Eric, you want to start? What's your observation from Switzerland?
So, obviously, I live in a different time frame by being in the watch industry, especially when you do the kind of watches we are doing. Are we fast enough in Europe? Are we bold enough in Europe? Are we innovative enough in Europe? I think there is a long way to go. When we see our colleagues in the US or in China. And I think our governments have to put around us also, and we are also the agents of changes, and we have to put around us a framework that allows us to take risks and try to accelerate our innovation frameworks and activities. Definitely, we are too slow.
Thanks, Eric. Anybody want to? Rolf, what's your take? Oh yeah, they have this nice.
I like your statement that we have to come back. I'm not sure if we ever had this attitude. So, look, I think the biggest belief and the biggest issue is that we don't have this belief in moonshots. By the way, we should discuss if anybody had been on the moon so far. Just kidding. I just saw an Apple TV movie about this. So no, just kidding about the conspiracy theory. But
Iceland.
But let's come back to what really makes us successful. We are very detailed, deep people, and I'm always saying when you take, for example, Mercedes-Benz or Daimler. Bertha Benz was the first VC in the world because she took the car out of the garage of her husband and drove to her, I think, her parents. And has demonstrated that it works. If he would not have had her, the car would still be in this garage, and there would be no car on the street from Mercedes. So the thing is, our attitude is different, and we are not this moonshot attitude. We have more this belief in depth. And what I think what we have to do in Europe to come back to this attitude to live our attitude is more to go to roof shots, because what we love to do is we make great stuff, but we are humble, and we are not so loud. So we are not saying this 95% without content, but being loud. It's more the 95% content because of the last 5% missing. We didn't make the move. So what I would like to do is I would say, hey, take your attitude and turn this into the right belief. And the attitude would be make a lot of roof shots, roof shot by roof shot, and then suddenly you will end up on the moon. And I think this is what we have to do. We always compare with other people with attitude, and I see this when you make then an in-depth discussion, how thin the story of the moonshot, or they think the moonshot people is, when you understand. And we have to respect our attitude that we always see the glass half empty. So we can complain now that we see it half empty, but to turn it half full, we have to accept this attitude and say, hey, show me the roof shot. And then you come to this. So this is... turn our humble attitude as something positive and make this repeatable, and then you will end up on the moon.
Oh, super. Thanks. Nice take, roof talk. Roof shot, sorry. I'm happy to introduce my slingshot model a little bit later during the networking piece. But do you also see attitudes? We've been very complacent and saying very happy to just be the best in the Europe, whereas when it comes to AI, there is no developing country or the third world country, or that differentiation is gone. So how do we, how do we make ourselves globally relevant? Andreas, you have, after the corporate experience, you're now doing your moonshot in a way. What are those ingredients which are not making us that globally relevant in the current AI race?
Okay, let me try two things. One is I like the roof shots, but as an aerospace engineer, I do like moonshots. And I personally believe we often forget to start the second stage. Yeah, if you think of an Ariane rocket or some other not more popular rockets currently, You never start with a single stage and end up with a single boost on the moon.
Yeah.
And we're very good at the first. Lift off, perfect. Counting down, lifting off. And then 10 meters above the ground, we say, okay, what do we do now?
What's next?
And this brings me to the point A. I believe many of our companies are humble of being the best in their own country, not in Europe. Going to Europe is already a huge challenge. Yeah? Some of you might know that there is a river between Germany and France. This is this is much wider than the ocean to North America. Going across the Rhine River, no matter which way, west or east, is mentally sometimes harder than to go to the US or to the UK. And this is something where I believe as a startup or as a small company, we need to find a way to address our local market bigger than we can throw a stone, and our counterparts in the geo to accept that we might not speak the local language perfectly. Yeah? Because you enter into a meeting, you go to Fiek in Lille, lovely meeting, 2 people come together, you're speaking with one English, a second Frenchman comes on the table, and the conversation turns to French. And you're suddenly there, well, maybe my French is not as good as it should be. And this is very hard. And this makes it very difficult and eats energy like hell of small companies to be able to take that. And this is a cultural discussion that we must have. And I love a saying from Philips. Our company language is bad English. Because most everybody does not speak natively English. And that makes it, just from a wording here, yeah, it doesn't make the English better, but it makes the acceptance better of within the company that people are trying to have a common language and might not miss or meet every single nuance and tone always perfectly. And I think that's where we need to go, and then we can expand and say, from France, from Germany, from Spain, we go to all of Europe. And then we have a base from which we can lift off and start the second and third booster.
Yeah. Johann, you want to continue?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's not easy if you're a startup, right? You have, as Aleph Alpha, we have that great research. Yeah? We have invested in 2019. We started a company. We had our first LLM, and nobody was talking about LLMs. And then suddenly you have this boom moment in, I think, 2022. And then suddenly the whole world takes the attention. The US does what they do best. They pour money into things they deem important and strategically relevant. We as Europeans don't pour so much money into things we should believe that they're relevant. But then, at least for Aleph Alpha, we were lucky. We were set out on a mission to work with to find the best strategic investors we have here in Europe, Schwarz, SAP, Bosch. So this was our way to secure the funds, to have that long-term investment that we can build out in our product. Now we're in a scale-up phase, right? So meaning we have now acquired all the team to get the product out in the market. And this is our way of doing it. And we're looking, Rolf talked about the customer zero. So this is actually our template where we will build our product with the customer zero and then roll it out to the rest of the market. And we actually focus on the industry, and we should not forget that. We have great industry in Europe. We have great global leaders. Yes, they're not of the size of Microsoft or Azure or Google or AWS, but they are small niche players where they are on the top 10, top 5. Some of them really on the top 1. And this is our customer base where we need to help them to digitize, to bring Gen AI technology into their processes. And they have a long way to go, but this is our market where we believe we can be successful and we can help transform Europe to be more active, more digital, more global.
Thank you, Maiara. I was going to go over to you as well from your perspective and Conceptboard perspective. How do you see those strengths playing for you for success, for scaling?
I think that as they were saying before, it's also about building this ecosystem of collaboration, so that we see that the startups, they have the support, they collaborate, and as Europe as a whole. So it's not only about Germany, it's not only about France, but it's about Europe today, and that's how we have to address, in a sense that we achieve what we want with our product. We, for Conceptboard, we have this whiteboard solution. We focus a lot in the data sovereignty, the data security, so and how we scale the product without losing this, and without is still focusing on this data sovereignty. So, yeah.
Super. Pascal?
Well, I think, well, I work for a large corporation, okay? So we are present in 52 countries, and so I'm not exactly a startupper. But, I mean, I can see, I do work with startups on an everyday basis because, of course, there are a number of companies who are trying to push technology to my group, and I'm, as in my position, in charge of evaluating the benefits for our company and how we could incorporate them in our landscape. But then I realized two things. First, I mean, the European market is very different, I think, from the Asian market, at least China on one hand, and the US market on the other hand. And it's very different because we are unique in being so diverse in terms of culture, in terms of languages, in terms of regional specificities, okay? So sometimes it's difficult to figure out how easy it can be for example, for an American person. And on top of that, especially if you had the language barrier, so an American person would expect everybody on earth to understand him, like when he speaks his native language. But you can try that if you are from Hungary, and the game is very different all of a sudden. So first thing first, I think it's both a strength as European and at the same time a difficulty to understand how diverse we are, and it's I think a psychological challenge to jump that river that you mentioned and accept the fact that you will be communicating in bad English, and then you need to push your startup to somebody which does not master your mother tongue. That's the first difference. Second difference is, I think, is related to a cultural perception of failure. I mean, you know the word from Samuel Beckett, who said, ever tried, ever failed, does not matter, try, fail again, fail better, you know? So, and in reality, I mean, personally, I've been failing 2 times, building new businesses and so on, and succeeding none, because I'm working not as the owner of my own business. But then it means that, I mean, it should be perceived as being okay to fail and fail and fail and fail again until you succeed. I mean, there's a legend built around the success of the startup that succeed, like as if the people were coming out of the garage and succeed on the first time, you know, first try. But in reality, they may have been failing 10 times before they succeed. Yeah. I mean, and if we do not acknowledge that, then it's very difficult for the people to go to a state of mind to accept the fact that, okay, I'm going to take risk, and okay, I may be failing, but so what? I mean, I will be learning. I learn from that, you know?
Absolutely. No, thank you. And I think that brings me to a very interesting point, you know. So if we were, so how might we question, everybody does the design thinking part, so how might we in Europe lead again with innovation? I want you to, you know, everybody to think about 2 things. What should we do differently from a culture perspective, so that we are, you know, points you said, bold, high-risk innovation back in Europe. What would you, as your company in your ecosystem, what would you like to see as change? And second, from the ecosystem itself, what role do you think universities or policymakers or investors can play in this, right? So yeah, let me start maybe with you, Johann, right? So let's, you know, how might we lead innovation, and what role culture, and secondly, parts of our ecosystem?
Yeah, I think we are in Europe really strong on the research side, on the core technology side. This is actually where we almost, in all of the technologies we use nowadays, have been under the top 5 Just remember, MP3 and all these things. I don't have to repeat them. I think you all know those stories. But what we miss and actually screw up quite a bit is executing. Yeah? Funding and turning that into a model that works and executing a long day. So what do we need to do that, right? That's the important question. I think both on the policy side, but also on the funding side, there is some things we need to change. On the policy side, we really have to get our act together as Europe. There has been a lot of wake-up calls recently in the last 2 years. And we as Europeans, I think we kind of developed that strength to not listen and not see what's really going on. I mean, DeepSeek for us was a Sputnik moment, actually more for the US big tech, not so much for us. We anticipated what happened. Hopefully you know what I'm talking about. I can also explain a little bit. The 500 billion the US is going to invest with funds from Japan, let's not forget that, into AI, another wake-up moment. And still, a lot of these things happen, and we have been really complacent. So we have to change our inner. We have to work on our inner, balance and weights, right? Because I'm sure Benz wasn't complacent when he started his car. Citroën wasn't complacent when he was starting his business. So now we kind of are complacent, and we have to work on our inner behavior. From the policy side, but also from the personal being, we have to just wake up. We as Germans have been, I think, really, taken care of by the US on the military level and the economic level the last 70 years. And this is over now. We knew it already 5 years back, but we still have not woken up. Yeah, the same on the technology side. So what I mean, we all have to wake up. Our policymakers have to wake up, and we have to make sure that we lure the global investment funds into Europe. When talking to one of the largest PE funds in the US, when you talk to them after 2 beers, what they tell you, our strategy is stay out of Europe, stay out of Germany. Why? Because it's not financially interesting enough to invest. When you talk to the Frankfurt guys, the bankers, who try to lure investments from China and from Japan, the same story. They come to Europe, say, hey, Germany, wow, the biggest country, second biggest France, right? Economy-wise. So let's invest there. They look into the details, they see all our complexities, they see all our taxes and all that thing, say, oh, we better stay out. Okay? So these things we have to change. There is a lot of money in the world. Yeah. We just have to make sure, policymakers, and also our inner understanding of what's important and what is not important, we have to get active.
Yeah. Thanks, Johann. Yes, Eric, over to you. We heard we have to wake up. Everybody in policy, etc. We have to wake up, not be complacent. How have you been observing this, especially when you're leading a digitization and digital efforts of such a successful luxury brand, and you have a completely different ecosystem challenge than quite a few players which are in the tech business. So how do you see this and your ecosystem that you depend on evolving to the challenge?
Okay, we have an ecosystem that is evolving not that quickly. I mean, we still do watches like we are doing mostly 100 years ago. However, we have to find new materials, we have to find new ways of doing things, and innovation is also the culture you are instilling in your company. And I would like to rebound on what said a gentleman about failure. We have to create an environment where failure is recognized and that the environment is safe enough to fail, because never forget that fail means what? First attempt in learning. And more we try and the more we fail and the more we try again, we are creating a culture of being safe. And then you start to accelerate by adding methodologies, not a table football, because we were all very good in creating those environments, cool environments with table football and saying, yeah, that's the place where we innovate and let's create an incubator in the company. And I think here we have to come back to some of our roots. First, we make promises to deliver, but secondly, we create an environment where it is safe enough to innovate and take risk and reward the risk. Otherwise, we are all in companies looking at our quarterly figures and looking at the EBITDA and making sure that if you fail, you get out. I think we have to come back from this measure of performance. It's not only the EBITDA, but it's also what we put in our culture to perform. And that's where I would see things a bit different. Obviously, Audemars Piguet is a smaller company than people that are on stage here. And we have the chance of being, creating safe environment to innovate, take risk, and to bring the next steps in fine oral richery.
Thanks, Eric. Brings me to a unique question. Rolf, you've traveled around the world. You've seen how Asia is good in scaling at the moment, so adapt very fast, scale. Don't wait for somebody to help you. If at the moment it's like if European companies want to be part of the Asian scale, you need to be there. You need to be part of the game. They're not waiting, right? So we always talked about this uniqueness of Europe, difference in languages, the unity in diversity you said earlier. And we see similar pattern also in Asia. They don't have a single common language either, right? Do you think we have a potential for some unique business models that are Europe-friendly, building on the resilience, the patience that we have, the speed? We're currently measuring only based on what we learned in the US, right? So you invest. So how do...
I like the question because look, here's the point. I'm German, but I'm more European. So I'm always saying, give me a European passport, I will swap my passport. So the first problem I see we have is we do not see our value and the great things we have here. So the biggest issue is we only think everything is bad. I can tell you when you look on the European Union and the Europeans, so you talk about complexity, I talk about diversity, but I see a huge market. Guys, we have such a huge market, and based on the diversity, the market is always becoming bigger. But we do not value this. We don't like it. Also the European Union, we do not like the Commission, because we think they overcomplicate everything. And I say, yes, but the idea is great. We have to simplify it in the execution mode. So the first thing is we have to value Europe, because in China, this is a central organized world. And I do not now make jokes about Taiwan, which is part of China or not. You know what I mean? We do not want to have this attitude here. I want to have a union and praise the individualism and the diversity. This is what we have to say. So I think we have the best system also from the freedom and the liberal way for individuals. In Europe, the government doesn't tell you what happens with your data. They don't tell you how to live. And in the US, it's the companies who tell you this. So this is what I'm saying. So the first thing we have to do is we have to accept that we are great. And we have to accept that we have a huge talent and education, that what we have here is unique. So when you have this, others understand also, oh, this is something which is a USP. The second point is to your question. I always made this, it was intended to be a joke, but meanwhile I'm saying every joke has a kind of truth inside. When I traveled around the world and lived in different places, and I think I had the big luck that I lived in the world globalization. So when I was born was not 2020, but some days earlier. But in the 2000s I was traveling with a German passport and some credit cards and 2 cell phones because of the bandwidth in Japan. You could go in more than 182 countries. Guys, this was hilarious. And I don't want to go into this right now because I have this in my keynote speech. When I look today, how limited the world is from the mindset. So praise what we have. And I always made this joke. If I will found a company again, I will have an Israeli, a German, an American, and a Chinese one. Because this is the best combination you can get for a startup, because the Israeli has the idea and the pragmatism before nobody else is thinking about it. The Germans takes this 80% solution, explains to you why this is a piece of shit, and start building it from scratch. But the German will finish up at 95% and he will never reach 100%, while the American is overselling 150% to the market. And then when the thing is finished, China will scale by factor 10. So this is how it is. And for me, the most important thing is understand what really makes you special, then understand what you do not have, and embrace others. I was working with Israelis. I was working with Americans. I can tell you I had a great time in Russia between 2012 and 2014. This was the most embracing country. I liked these people because of this deep mathematical education. I can tell you, I had people, when you won the loyalty, this is like with Israelis, when you win the loyalty of an Israeli, you will never get rid of him. The same with Russians. It was, those people are looking in the deep value of people. And when you win this was for me the great time. This is what we have to embrace, being this openness on the real heart of what makes people different. And then, and this is just to be very clear, when I checked some data of statistics, which I like sometimes flying around, I learned that in Germany last year, we worked 34.2 hours a week. Mm-hmm. Germans work 34.2 hours a week. So, I mean, this means for me that I'm usually done on Tuesday night or Wednesday morning, but I don't have a 2 days week. Look at China. They don't work below 60 hours. I'm sorry. They have thousands of more people on the same job, working twice the time. They are hungry. We have to get out of the complacency. I'm sorry to say this. There's only one place where success comes before work, and this is the dictionary. We have to get back to a working attitude, because this is the key thing. Nothing is for free. Even in Vegas, there's no free lunch. They do pay somewhere else. But this is why I'm saying these are the three elements. Understand our core values. We have such great values for people. We have such a great amount of people in the market. We have to fear nothing. There is the market, there's the talent. Accept the variety and get your damn body back to work. This is what it is.
Fantastic. It's that talent, and there's one very specific set of talent called the CFOs. Let's come to that and say the value-based business models. We're talking about Europe's values. I don't see any value-based business models that are based on European values. So you both as startups, would there be anything like that? Question one, right? Would there be, if you were to change your own measurement today, right, and ignore the talent called CFO for now, who's behaving as controller many times, not a promoter, what would that be? Would there be any scope? And you're working, Pascal, also with a lot of startups. How do you feel? Is there a potential for something like that?
I'm very much willing to answer that. So, I mean, we are very international. We are an international group, and I'm pretty much the same, in the same state of mind as you. I think, I mean, there are wonderful people just about everywhere, and one of the key difficulties is to identify and attract these people and retain them. So that's a major difficulty. But then, I mean, we need to consider that when that I'm relating that to the noble purpose that we mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. You see, I mean, as a company, we have a responsibility. We have a corporate social responsibility. I mean, and this is not just something that you put in a report because you want to to publish a report once a year. I mean, there is behind it a commitment, and that commitment is something that may go way beyond the what you actually need to deliver in the coming year. Okay. For my company, it goes beyond the scope of Europe's sovereignty because we are not aligning on a specific continent or something like that. But it goes, for example, for something which is much more ambitious related to climate change and the social impact that as a company we can have on the market and on the world. Okay, I mean there's a clear gap. As somebody told me once, I mean the values is what's left when everybody else is gone. I mean, and at the end of the day, you've got the values and what you defend and how you defend the values of the company on the market, you know. In our case, I mean, what is the point of being successful in a number of areas if at the end of the day, the whole world is burnt down? You know, that's pretty much where we are when we talk of technology, of AI and success, you know? I mean, especially in the area of AI, where everybody can feel the appetite for such technology. And there was a question this morning, I mean, this may be the most dirty technology in ICT in years. I mean, it involves mining, it involves huge amount of energy consumption and so on. And still, I mean, we have commitments towards the society. I mean, if you're best in class, then you need to show the example. You need to lead by example. So the question is, can we achieve success with good conditions? Like, I don't want to take my customers' data and give them to anybody. And at the same time, keep in sight that success perspective and still uphold the former commitments I took related to the general public welfare and well-being. And that's, I mean, for my company at least, is I'm lucky enough to be in a position where I feel like long-term objectives are aligned with short-term objectives. Mm-hmm. So we have an ambition to grow, we have an ambition to be best in class, and at the same time, we have an ambition to control our carbon emissions because, I mean, just for my business, the impact will be dramatic if we let these carbon emissions keep growing on, okay? And then I leave to everyone in the audience to decide whether the moonshot needs to translate into something dramatic for the rest of the public. When we take a look at what's happening in China and the US, I'm not entirely optimistic. I mean, maybe DeepSeek may be at least part of a solution with something we call frugal AI, where we reduce the consumption of energy compared to the value we deliver. But I'm not entirely optimistic when I take a look at what's happening in the US.
Andreas?
Just to pick you up on your thought on the CFO, yeah? We're talking about sovereignty. And there's one simple sovereignty. If you got cash in the bank, you're more sovereign than if you have no cash in the bank. Yeah? And that counts for large companies. The numbers are bigger. They usually all have money in the bank, but the question is how much. But it counts even more for smaller companies. The small companies have a much shorter lifeline usually. Yeah? So, of course, I know they're very successful legal companies with 5 lawyers, and they don't know where to pile the money. But if we look into tech, yeah, even Aleph Alpha, who is buried under money they got, at least what the press says, they need to have a CFO that needs to manage this. So from one point of view, the CFO has this important role. He is not chief innovation officer, not chief food officer, or maybe he is chief food officer, but food in terms of capability to decide. He's the enabler of decisions if he ensures that you have access to money at the time you need it at an affordable price. And therefore, it is very good to have this contradiction and say, yeah, you have that person. So would I want to change my CFO? Not necessarily. Maybe he could drink coffee in a different flavor, but that's his view. But that's the one view on this. And this is something which is totally outside of all the reporting. Can we change some measurements? I believe we can change measurements, we can change reporting, and we can highlight topics that are important to us in the way we act and steer. Yeah? And of course, I used to work for an American company, and I said, when people ask me how long did I work for them, I say 60 years. Yeah? And even though I might look that way, I'm not 60 by now. I was 15 human calendar years, but it was 60 company years, because every quarter had 12 weeks, and every week was handled like a month. Mm-hmm. So you basically had 4 company years in 1 calendar year. This is a management methodology. Here we can be different in Europe. Here we can say European values work different. But you still, at the end of the day, if you want to have money in the bank, you need to deliver to expectations of the people that give you money. And a European VC, a European PE, and mostly also a European government, cannot give you money for nothing, whilst the rest of the world gives you a lot of money for it. And you might remember that there was a study, the ECA with Oliver said that in innovation, Europe is spending almost identical much money like the US. They're spending, I believe, 250 billion, we're 249 billion or so. So public subsidies in innovation is equal on par in the two geos. The point is, here it levers by 0 point something, there it levers by 10. And that's what we need to change. And that is something that we cannot change. We say, oh, we're all nice to each other, but we got to get back to what you said, get our act together. And what you had earlier around processes, just to pick up on that, not comply with the process for the sake of the process, but for the sake of the result. And this is something where the governments need to start and the companies need to follow very fast. Because, of course, as the governments have driven this model process for the sake of the process engines in the companies have followed because they need to adopt. So it needs to change with the government. We deliver a result-driven focus, and then we can move the whole industry and make them accelerate significantly from my point of view.
Super, thanks. You know, one of the key things talked about in that acceleration is the role of corporates together with the startups, right? So, well, it's interesting. Sometimes you really think, okay, if that relationship will help scale things, or from a startup point of view, sometimes, you know, and we had a good discussion earlier, sometimes it would be slowing. So, what's your take on, you know, is it friend or foe? So, what tips would you have as a startup to effectively work with the corporates, and as a corporate to effectively be able to successfully work with a startup, right? So Mariana, let's start with you as a startup. What would you expect from the corporates to be?
I think as we talked, you were talking also before, we talked in the morning also this embrace the risk. So and go and try and embrace this risk. But of course that for this to happen, we need the space and the environment to execute, as you said, to experiment also. Otherwise, and the money, that's for sure. If we don't have money, we do nothing. That's something, but we need this space. And for this, I understand that public and private sectors, for example, they have to work together. So in a way that we can motivate, incentivize, and change this environment, build this ecosystem, also work in the policies, the regulations, so and keep the knowledge. So and the people that have the knowledge, invest on them so that they don't go out. So, yeah.
Okay, super. Eric, any thoughts on that? Friend or foe? What's your expectation from a startup that's approaching you and wants to, you know, wants to partner with you? What are the do's and don'ts for the startups?
Yeah, listen, working with a startup brings you fresh air in a corporation. Because you don't deal anymore with the Accenture of this world. When you are in tech, with the Accenture, IBM, and so on. So you can go and deal with people that are super ambitious, that are super hungry, and that help you to accelerate few things in also the cultural transformation you want to address. However, the difficulty with a startup, it's to scale, because there is a moment when you're a corporation, you need to scale. And it's how you can help them either to scale by creating an ecosystem with the startup and some of your peers in the industry or whatsoever. But for me, that has been the biggest experiment with startup. We never put as company a venture fund in startups and trying to coach them and help them and so on, but we are mostly helping them by committing resources and activities with the startup in order to have an outcome. And that helped us to create, in fact, in my former company, the first perfume and the first flavor generated by AI, with people that were super motivated, with people that were breaking the rules, and with people that didn't know the impossible was not possible. So For me, it's an engagement of resources and a support to scale.
Super, thanks a lot. Good takeaways, and you know, I want to expect more actionable takeaways. There is another topic that we will leave for a little bit of our networking, but one sentence quick take on that for as an appetizer. We've seen a lot of corporate innovation programs. They come and then they disappear, or these open innovation programs for the startups. Are they really helpful? Do you have any piece of advice for these open innovation, startup innovation programs anchored by a single company or a brand? We've seen a big rise of it in Europe, and now suddenly many of them are closing. So what's your take? Maybe Johann.
Yeah, I also worked at SAP, so I saw some of those innovation programs. My take on these are you have to give those people who want to have a startup in a large corporation some freedom. And you have to make sure that they are not sucked up by the corporate processes, by the sheer scale of what's going on there on a daily business. So ideally, you leave them so that they can do their own thing, and then it might work out. But the question really is, if you are a type of corporate person, employee, and you want to start up a startup in a corporation, maybe that's already the wrong idea to start with. Because then you might need to go outside first, yeah? So I'm a little bit skeptical.
Okay. Yeah, one advice?
Yeah, I would comment on that. I mean, personally, when I joined AXA, it was 9 years ago. And, I mean, I joined AXA because, I mean, they originally invited me to become a project manager on some ECM project. So, ECM content management, enterprise content management. And then I land in that company, and then I go see the chief architect, and I tell him, okay, I know some things about content management. I've been doing it for 25 years now, so back then you can compute. And then I tell him, okay, what do you exactly expect from me? He said, we want to redevelop a content management solution. We want to kick out IBM's FileNet from our portfolio. So you're going to redevelop it, and you're going to deploy it in dozens of countries. I was like, whoa, okay, interesting. How much money do I get? And he said, 15 million. So that's how the story started, you know. And like he said, you've got 5 years, 3 million a year. Now you need to. We know it's going to take some time, and I've been with that company for 9 years, and I'm still there. It turned to be a major success. So crossing fingers, lucky. So I know a few things about scaling. I know also the difficulties of scaling. I know the difficulties of matching numerous regulations and going through frontiers and laws and all the things like that. Actually, we got 2 FIT certified. So I mean, for German people, that may mean something, but for French people, I can tell you how painful it was. It was a totally new experience. But at the end of the day, the advice I can give you is I do agree with you. I mean, there's a difference between having a good idea at a moment and then scaling. I mean, that's a major step. And people in large corporations, they know how to expand and how to scale and how to stabilize something which has grown very large, where it may not be necessarily in the set of skills of people who want to innovate and have a good idea. And when I work with startups, one of the big difficulties I encounter is that I'm challenging them on telling them, okay, we need to operate this in 50 different countries. So it has to be industrial. So you need to work the solution not only on the good features, but you need to make it operable over many different countries, many geos, 24/7. It has to be resilient, has to be proof tested in many ways. So that's where I think we as corporation can bring maturity
really
to the startups.
Yeah. No, super. So, Rolf, one bold move Europe should make in next 5 years. What would be your take? One bold move.
Just one. No, but it's for me. It's definitely. If it's a bold move, it's quantum. If it's not a bold move, it is a combination of AI and cybersecurity, because there we have all the assets. We just have to put together. But quantum computing, I believe, Europe can definitely outpace and come up with the first Siemens Nixdorf kind of computer again.
Quantum move, excellent. Mariana, any piece of advice for investors? It was to you. Yes.
Everybody's looking away from that. Throw more money at us. But seriously.
Okay, let's change that. Any piece of advice for policymakers? You both have to answer. One advice each.
Policymakers work together, so as that we build something for Europe and not for each country. That companies, we see us with our startups and scale-ups having to adapt to each country's policies, and this is really complicated, and certifications. So yeah,
we should do certification as a service. I think in Germany we're so good at bringing all these things. I have a new business model in mind we should discuss.
So you're applying for TÜV or what?
Yeah, exactly.
No, but
TÜV as a
for
TÜV as a
policymakers, the one sentence would be deduplicate.
Deduplicate.
Deduplicate. Yeah. Don't invent the wheel just because you are new in government. Deduplicate what's there, because I believe we have 80% already double there. And then find the holes and close the few holes that are left.
And Björn, what would be your one advice for founders today?
Take the risk. It's worth it. It's actually a lot of fun. And don't forget what we are good at. It's all the diversity, it's the great university, and also be conscious on where we're not good at. We had it, complacency, not a lot of investment, but leverage what you have, what you find here, and do something with it. It's a lot of fun, and fail often.
Awesome. Eric, just very final one. If you were a European startup founder today, what would you do differently?
Okay, Switzerland is not part of Europe. Let's put it like that. So I would stay in Switzerland to have the simplicity of the environment, because one of the advice for the European community it's to simplify the environment and to create the momentum for the companies to create their business. Sincerely, for me, it's unlearning and relearning our environment. We all went to school and we learned things that are not applying anymore to the world we live in. And we have to relearn the context where we are in today without all the heaviness of the past times.
Thank you. As we see, ladies and gentlemen, maybe with all of these insights, we will have the next, deep tech unicorns or AI breakthroughs, maybe quantum leaps, and climate tech revolution, not coming only from Palo Alto or from Shenzhen, but maybe from Munich, from Paris, from Lisbon, Stockholm. There are many thoughts here. Any audience questions to see? One or two? We can take one or two questions.
Quick ones.
2 questions.
2 quickies.
To this amazing panel.
One quickie question. Didier?
Actually, it's a follow-up comment. Quantum has been mentioned twice by Rolf already. The last meeting we had last year in Amsterdam was about quantic technology, quantic computing. And I would like to, it's a call for action I would like to give you, I'd like to be short. Quantic, nobody understands, here in the room, neither do I. But there is one thing I've understood. The day the quantic computer will be ready, it will go extremely fast. So what we'll urge you to do right now is to start to try to understand not the quantic computing, but try to understand the use case you can do. Try to imagine them, because the day will come, it will just be too late.
Maybe just one feedback. The reason I mentioned it twice is because I'm working for years on this. This is number one. Number two is what people. I know that most people didn't do mathematics and didn't study it because it's so complex, and most people stop when the numbers move up in the exponential area. This is the part of quantum computing. So whenever you hear Aleph alpha and LLMs and these graphs, think about a graph in the matrix, and this is what's all about quantum. So I can tell you today, everything you do in neuronal networks, and we talk about AI, with quantum computing, this becomes real time. Everything you do today in cryptographic, everything you do in cyber, with quantum, it's a leapfrog. Everything you do with these so-called NP problems. So whenever you study mathematics and you go on recursion and inversion and the people don't get this, this is with quantum done. So all the so-called non-solved NP problems will be solved. Think about what this means for logistics, for medicine and so on. People have no clue. With quantum, it's not just a faster computer generation. No, we can solve the first-time problems we cannot solve today. The next thing is everything we talk about AI, which is on a complex graph, will complete light speed. And then what I can tell you about quantum computing, going there in for years, it won't take more than 5 years. And it will be here. And I can tell you what I saw so far, it's the first time that we can compute faster than we have the phases, because quantum is not static. It's a complex physical environment. But I have seen now some chemical areas. I believe that before 2030, there will be something. And what I don't like is that people have talk about quantum and when it will come. They should talk about, this is why I like your comment, about the impact quantum will have to do and start changing today. And this is something, I like this innovation stuff. I didn't want to say it, but now I say it. You know what? Why did all these innovation incubators not work? Because you had your company, and then next to it you made the innovation garage, and they're all done. Why? Because people don't like change. People hate change. You don't need innovation, you need incubation. And so start incubating today. So I like the Japanese saying, good fences make good neighbors, which means I love change as long as it happens at my neighbor. This is what you have to put in. And with quantum, every process has to be rethought. The same like with AI. But this is what people have to start today. I tell you, in 5 years, we will have a generation where it's very close to become standard.
Super. Thank you. Do we have one more burning question?
A burning one. It must be really good. So no one.
All right. Yeah.
Pressure. The pressure.
No pressure. Otherwise, I'll ask you a question as audience. We haven't done that, right? Is a panelist allowed to ask questions to audience as well?
You may. You
Okay.
can do anything.
All right. Now, first of all, hey, thank you. A couple of very quick takeaways. Thanks for sharing all the insights and your experiences. Very valuable. Moonshots need mind shift. It needs, yes, of course, in Europe, funding, scaling, support must improve. Global expansion is key, or for European startups and corporate partnerships helping to become globally relevant. That's key. We saw that. Corporate startup collaboration, it can be a game changer if you do it right. And a unified ecosystem, especially if policymakers and governments, investors, corporates, if they can work together to drive the real change. I'd like to thank our great panel today. Big applause for them. Thank you for sharing insights. And I promised one question to you. So before I leave, I want to thank you again for your attention. And I want to give you one question that you should think. You don't have to answer it now, but think about it. Why are you relevant 10 years from now? Thank you very much. Cheers.